Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?
Welcome to the Think Small podcast, where we go deep with founders, operators, and experts who are doing the real work of building businesses in the small and mid-market. I'm your host, Denise Steinbring, and today's guest is going to make you rethink something you probably haven't thought about at all. And if you sell anything online, you need to pay attention. So Michael Poropat is the co-founder and intellectual property attorney at Stockman and Poropat, a boutique law firm based in Lynbrook, New York, that has built its entire practice around one of the most underserved communities in American business, the e-commerce entrepreneur. If you sell on Amazon, Etsy, Walmart, or any major platform, you are operating under a set of risks that most sellers don't know exist until the day everything stops. So Michael's got some great stories to share with us. Michael and his partner Travers built this firm to make sure that day never ever comes. And if it does, you have someone in your corners. So, Mike, such a pleasure to have you on the Think Small podcast. I've been looking forward to this one.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Anything about your background that you'd like to share that maybe I left out?
No, I mean, I can tell you a little bit about how I got there if you'd like, but I think you nailed the background pretty well.
It's an interesting story. Please share.
Sure. So obviously I didn't always grow up an attorney. I was a student before that. I went to undergrad in Florida at Florida Atlantic University. And I had actually, I had majored in physics on a dare from a friend.
$20, right?
I don't remember exactly what it was. I think it was like 20, $25, whatever it was. He dared me. I couldn't do it. I proved him wrong. I did it for 2 years, I think, because I went through my freshman and sophomore year. Turns out I really liked it for the most part. I liked the science part about it. But inevitably ended up switching out, not because it was too difficult or anything, just because I thought it was pretty lame. Because what they would do is they would actually have the formulas. When you take a test, they'll give you a list of the formulas that you have to plug in, and then they would give you the questions. And the entire test was just which formula goes with which type of question, which I found kind of silly. I didn't feel like it was actually testing knowledge of anything, and I kind of got bored with it. And so, even though I had an incredible love for astronomy, which is obviously very physics based, I ultimately decided to swap out, and I went with something a little more interesting when it ended up being theoretical mathematics, which is as useful as it sounds. Uh, it was great. It was a super cool mind exercise, but it wasn't very helpful in terms of a career building thing. And when I got towards the end of my undergrad career, I spoke with my advisor and I was like trying to figure out what to do. And they were like, well, you can teach math. I'm like, all right, well, how do I do that? And like, well, you go back to masters, back to school and get your master's in math. It's like, so more math. They're like, yeah, more math. I'm like, all right, what about like, is there any other thing I can do? Can I not really? No, it's just that. I'm like, okay. Like that was kind of my option. And I think I was junior going into senior at the time, and I didn't really want to teach math, although coincidentally I found a passion in teaching lately. But I didn't want to teach math at the time, and I wanted to give myself more open doors. And at that time, my sister was an attorney for the New York Stock Exchange. And I talked to her, and she was like, look, at the time, my favorite hobbies or pastimes really were sports, music, and video games. And she said, why don't you go into law? And that'll kind of open up some more doors to allow you to kind of work in those industries. And at that point, I kind of realized that being an attorney wasn't necessarily an industry. It was a job that I can apply to various different industries. And it really did open the door to kind of just an entire new life of whatever it is that I wanted to do, as long as I applied, that skill set to that industry. And so I went to New York Law School in Lower Manhattan, specifically for interactive media, video games. I got very interested and into the professional esports industry, which was incredibly small at the time. And when I graduated, I ended up starting my own pro bono law firm, specifically to help the players that were in esports and in competitive gaming, which was a whole nother element of weirdness because it was so new at the time that the people who owned these teams and these organizations were like 18 and the players were like 14. and they were just making their own rules. I mean, I literally had to have fights with 18-year-old organization owners because they would not allow these players to come in with any kind of legal representation to negotiate their contracts. And the kids, I mean, the kids, they're 14 years old. They don't know better. They just get, you're going to pay me $100 to play a video game? Yeah, I'll do it. Like, they don't care, right? They don't understand the concepts of anything. So it was the wild, wild west. And no one had any money to pay anything. So I was doing it primarily on a pro bono basis while I started working as a no-fault attorney to actually make money on the side. And then, kind of just fell into the pigeonhole of being a no-fault attorney. It started taking over my entire life in terms of how much time and effort I had to put in there. I was driving 3-4 hours a day from Suffolk County to Staten Island just to go to court and come back. It was not pleasant, although I did get to listen to plenty of podcasts. So that was always the benefit. Learned a lot. And then, at some point, Travis Stockman, my partner, started his own firm, who I had met at one of my no-fault law firms. And he wanted to do something based on IP and Amazon. And we talked about it and decided to jump ship. And the reason why we both really wanted to do that was primarily because we were unhappy with what we were doing previously. And most specifically because we were not able to assist people that actually needed the help.
Sure.
And what I mean by that is when we did no fault, because we both, Travis and I both did no fault and personal injury, not so much personal injury, more on the no fault side, we were representing one of two people. We were either representing the insurance companies, the Geico, State Farms of the world, who don't need any more money and therefore don't appreciate, or I shouldn't say don't appreciate enough the small cases that the no fault attorneys, get for, a couple $1,000s. Or you are representing the doctors against those insurance companies who have just maybe not as much money, but have just the same problem where they're bringing in, $20-30 million a year, and your cases are $1,500 and they get 1,000 of the $1,500. And, it's excess income to them. So they were never appreciative of it either.
Yeah.
And we just felt like we needed something that was more direct, more purposeful, that actually reached someone who actually needed the assistance, needed the help, and that we could grow with them. And my God, I'm so happy I did it. I mean, it's been 5 years now already. And the amount of impact that I have had on individuals and specifically small business owners is 20-30 fold the amount that I could possibly have done throughout my entire career as a no fault attorney. And to me, that was far more valuable than anything else that I've ever gotten. But yeah, that's the whole background. And now here we are.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like the whole arc of your career journey from solving math problems to solving business problems, right, remained the same. But now you're getting to do it, in a way that aligns with your values of helping people. So that's great.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how much theoretical mathematics actually does. I mean, it in and of itself isn't helpful, but the idea of it helps to get your problem solving issues in order on a business, which I didn't really realize until I started my own business, because it's a completely different set of problems.
Exactly. Well, before we get into the legal deep end, let's just start with the firm itself. Can you tell our listeners what Stockman and Pourapad is, who you serve, and what your day actually looks like?
Sure. So our slogan is "We're entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs," and that means exactly what it means, right? We are entrepreneurs. We started our own company. We are focused on business owners. It can be small business owners. It can be big business owners. I have some clients that make over $10-20 million a year. I have other clients who are still in deficits and haven't even started a company yet. It all varies, but the idea behind that is to help those who are creating companies, who are creating content, who are creating things to impact their own lives going forward, generally on a business standpoint. We have an incredible amount of clients that are Amazon and e-commerce sellers. My partner, Travis Stockman, is one of the most renowned Amazon sellers or Amazon attorneys, in all of the world. If you join any of these Amazon groups or anything, his name is sure to pop up. Generally, our firm will, but his name specifically is very well known. And so because of that, we have a lot of Amazon seller clients that we help get reinstatements back. We file arbitrations against Amazon. We help them enforce and defend their enforcement of their brands on Amazon. But anything that has to do with running a business from point A to litigation, we handle now.
Okay, great. Well, maybe let's start with the thing that I think is going to shock most of our listeners. Most Amazon sellers think their biggest risk is competition or bad reviews. But you've seen hundreds of cases where sellers had their accounts frozen, their funds held, and their businesses essentially shut down overnight, not because they did anything wrong, but because a big brand filed a claim against them. Walk me through what actually happens in that moment and why most sellers have absolutely no idea that this could happen.
Sure. So there's a couple different ways that Amazon sellers can kind of get taken down on Amazon, or we kind of break it up into suspended or terminated. Terminated meaning you can't sell anymore. Suspended meaning it's temporary. And the two different ways follow two very different paths, and they're primarily based on the source of the issue. So in the circumstance you're speaking of, we're talking about a big brand, maybe an Apple, maybe Google, maybe even something smaller than that, filing a complaint against you because you're selling their product or you're selling a version of their product that they think might be infringing on their intellectual property, right? So that could be anything from you legitimately reselling their product on your own listing or even on that company's listing. Or it could be something like you white labeled your own product that's similar enough, and they think that it might be too close to their patent or that you're using their trademarked name to describe it. And you'd be surprised how easy it is to fall into that, not just because of the legal ramifications, the legal definition and structure of that, but also because they will try to kind of throw spaghetti at the wall and see who gets taken down. And if you're caught in the crossfire of that, then you're just a victim of that action, and you don't really always know what action to take. So what we usually do to handle those cases is primarily reaching out to the rights owner to actually resolve it. Most of the time, they get resolved pretty simply, usually with either some sort of a sell-off as a worst-case scenario where the client can kind of sell off their inventory and they won't bother them anymore. Or in a lot of cases, just resolution in the fact that we don't believe they have a basis to move forward and they're not looking at the pushback. In fact, this happens a lot. When we do trademark filings with the USPTO, it goes through a process for about 14 months. And one of those processes is called the opposition phase. And I call it the speak now or forever hold your peace phase. And other trademark owners can kind of oppose your mark and say that shouldn't be registered because it's going to hurt me, right? And there's a tactic out there that a lot of attorneys and trademark owners utilize where they just oppose a lot of trademarks. And the idea is let's oppose and see if they answer. And if they don't answer, then they're going to go away. And that might be, too much effort, too much money for them to do it. Maybe they are foreigners. They don't speak the language. They don't understand what it is they have to do. And you get an easy default. And then it's one less competitor you have to worry about. These companies do the same thing on Amazon and on all these platforms where they take action and the assumption is, well, let's see if they do anything. If they do something, we can always withdraw. And if they don't do something, then, we just swatted them down and it didn't cost us much. And it's important for people who are using these services to understand what category they fall in, because like I said before, it's very easy to fall into the area where you cross that line into infringement and not realize you are. Mm-hmm. And it's also very easy to not even be close and still be caught into the fire. And understanding what is all the difference in terms of how you attack it. But you have to attack it, because if you don't fight back, then you're just going to get plowed over and do it all over again. The second way that Amazon people get taken down is by the source of Amazon, meaning that instead of somebody else saying or complaining about your ASIN or your listings, Amazon will audit and find something. Maybe they don't trust that your sources are good and they want to see your invoices, which is happening more and more frequently now. And if you don't provide good invoices, they might take you down because they think the goods are inauthentic, even though they have no basis to do so. They'll look at your reviews, and if they notice some of the reviews say, hey, this came in a Walmart box, they're going to assume you're drop shipping, and then they're going to take you down and investigate that. There's a number of different things that can happen where you'll get taken down, and the responses to those can vary greatly. We see them happening more and more recklessly, I'll call it. The last year or two. And I think that's primarily because they are utilizing AI technology so much to evaluate these things. Wow. And they just kind of it goes through the system and it hits some sort of a trigger point and it goes, okay, well, this must be an issue, pushes it over to the side. And sometimes the hardest part of resolving that is actually getting an actual person with a human heartbeat to look at it. Yeah. Which is, it shouldn't be that difficult, but it is increasingly difficult these days. But, there are so many different ways to attack it and so many different ways to fall into it that people just have to be really careful. And it's easy to fall into.
Yeah. It's sad to think that this has turned into an automated fishing expedition, right? Do you find that your clients know that they can push back, or do they just go into panic mode and, start removing products and so forth?
It depends. I think it depends on the sellers. So some sellers have been doing this for years. I mean, I have guys who have been doing this for 15 years and they've gone through 25, 30 different iterations of the structure of how Amazon operates. And those guys tend to just, they know what's coming. They do what they can as cheaply as they can to try to overcome it. And then when it doesn't work, they kind of come to us as the big guns and we kind of push through. But they always have these systems in place to try to avoid those or get around them as best as they can anyway.
Uh-huh.
But it's the newer sellers that always concern me, because the newer sellers, when anyone starts a business, you have one of two people. Either they are just flying by the seat of their pants and they're not thinking about anything but how to make money, or they are the most overcautious person in the world and they want to do everything completely right. Not shockingly, the ones who contact us tend to fall on the more cautious side, because why would the people by the seat of their pants ever reach out to an attorney to begin with, right?
Right.
So the majority of our clients that are starting companies have this mindset where they don't want to get in trouble. And Amazon puts down some sort of a performance notification, and they're just like, "Oh my God, what did I do?" And they won't fight back. They'll kind of lay down and take the action to remove it and kind of apologize. And sometimes that's the right move. Sometimes it isn't. Again, knowing and understanding the issue that you have is half the battle in everything, right? Let's go back to theoretical mathematics. Can't give an answer if you don't have a question, right? So we need to understand what that is first before we attack it. But you can't just bend over on everything, because then you're just going to end up not having a store when Amazon is just pumping out tons and tons of AI generated notifications that are just catching everybody with and without base.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow. Let's go back for a moment to your path, to becoming an attorney. You talked a lot about your esports and your video games and your no fault work that you were doing, but how did that road shape the kind of lawyer and the kind of business owner that you became? Because you really
That's an
seem to,
interesting question.
yeah, you really seem to have a heart for, helping people, right? So how did that?
I think that I don't know how much that path necessarily helped me as much as it was who I am kind of crafting what that path was, if that makes sense. But I think that path unlocked the ability to target the type of people and the type of things that I want to do, right? As a gamer myself, I always think of things in terms of video games in general, right? Even when it comes to money, like I kind of treat money like points. Like the more of it I have, the more I'm winning, right? Like something like that. And that helps me save and that helps me make good financial decisions. And that's just the way that I think.
Mhm.
And going through the process of becoming a lawyer, and especially realizing that law was the career and not necessarily the industry, really helped me kind of refocus and be like, all right, who do I want to target now? And I think what I ended up realizing is that as a creator, because I'm also a musician, I really liked the idea of helping those who create, because those who create tend to not either care or understand about the legal aspects of it. And when I went through law school and my internship specifically, I noticed a lot of the people who were having hardships in career was the artist.
Mhm.
And the term artist is very broad, especially these days, but anyone who was creating some form of art form, not necessarily just drawers or comic book writers or video game creators, but anyone who was creating any form of content. And as I went through law school, because I graduated law school in 2015. Yeah, 2012, 2015. Yep. And so that was kind of the middle of the content creation era in terms of social media. And so when I graduated undergrad, I had friends who were, starting their own businesses on social media. And by the time I was under law school, like that was just a natural thing that every company had to do, and that not every company understood. So even to the extent where people were business owners, but now they are becoming creators, opened up this weird, interesting path where so many people were creators now, and so few of them understood the legal aspects of it. And so many of them were getting screwed over or hurt as a result of that, that
Uh-huh.
it just made it so easy for me to be like, I know these things. I enjoy these things. I can give back the way that I've been trying to give back for years and haven't been able to. And it just kind of lines up really easily that way. I'm really thankful that Travis gave me the opportunity to jump ship at some point, because I don't know if I ever would have done it on my own. And if I hadn't, I wouldn't have been able to be as impactful as I am, and hopefully will continue to be through my career.
Yeah. And I think you had shared a story with me previously that when you and Travis started the firm, the conversation was, we're not going for clients, we're going for friends. And
Yes.
that's a very specific way of running a business. So say more about what that actually means for how you run the business.
So for us, we don't want to treat people as numbers, and we don't generally, not the way we run life in general. We want to treat people like they are family. And
Mhm.
the most important reason for that is because you treat family differently. And don't get me wrong, one of my family members, my cousins, or whatever, has to do something. I'm not charging them, or I'm charging them very little to do it. That's not what I mean.
Yeah.
What I mean is the amount of effort and time and energy and care that goes into these clients are the same amount of energy and time and effort that they go into when they're family. And we try really hard to instill that into our employees as well. I think it's a mantra of our firm for sure.
Mhm.
And I think the majority of them do a very, very good job of employing that. But for Travis and I specifically, like, there is no client in this firm that we would not go above and beyond for because of that. And it starts with that mantra where we want friends, not clients.
Yes.
And it does create some weird issues because sometimes you care so much about the client that it becomes hard to kind of sit down and watch them make decisions that harm themselves. But at the end of the day, it is their choice. All we're allowed to do is advise them. But
Right.
I know that I can go to sleep at night knowing that I have given the most amount of effort and as much advice and good legal advice as I can to each of these people to make sure that they know the decision that they're going to make is correct. And that was very, very important to Travis and I, and has been something that it's an unofficial slogan of the law firm at this point. It's said so frequently, and it just runs through the law firm's blood and their law firm's veins at this point. It really does.
Which is great because I think there's probably some distrust of lawyers, right? And so to hear that probably brings you a lot of referrals because people have had a great experience with you in helping them solve their challenges.
The number of times I've had to apologize for my colleagues being my other lawyers is just absurd. I don't understand how people operate, their business. And I'm not here to tell them how to, but if you can't give someone the time of day to speak to them for $15 because they're not willing to give you a paid consult, like, I don't think you should be serving people. Like to me, that's not a service company anymore.
Yeah.
So I just have to think of things differently. But yeah, it ends up giving obviously great referrals because people really do enjoy our experiences. And enjoy working with us. And it's very, very common that when we work with someone, we tend to work with them for life. I mean, we've only been open for 5 years, but there are very few clients that we've worked with that haven't come back for other issues, completely unrelated issues sometimes. I mean, we've helped Amazon clients reinstate their account, and then 2-3 years later they need to buy a house and they call us.
Oh,
And
wow.
even if we're in a different state, they call us.
Yeah.
They just go to us first.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but it's
Well,
because of the way that we treat them.
yeah. Well, that says a lot about your customer experience and your commitment to helping people. So that's great. Um, so here's a business problem I'd love to dig into with you because I think it applies to a lot of professionals listening, not just attorneys. You are essentially selling protection against a risk that most of your potential clients don't know that they have. The seller doing $2 million a year on Amazon thinks everything is fine. They're not looking for an IP attorney. They've never even Googled what happens if Amazon suspends my account. So how do you reach that person other than referrals, as we already talked about? But how do you create urgency around something that hasn't happened yet?
Sure. So, first of all, I don't like the idea of creating urgency. I don't think it warrants it. I don't think urgency necessarily helps protect, right? It helps kind of make you aware of things, but I also don't want to scare people into thinking they need certain things because in reality, you don't need insurance, right? I mean, granted, there are laws. If I have a mortgage, I need to have homeowners insurance. But we have that rule in place because most people wouldn't have homeowners insurance because why would I pay an extra $2,000 a month to protect my home or whatever it is? And it's because people are more risk averse or more risk taking than they are risk averse these days. And so I don't like to create that sense of urgency as much as I do kind of educate. And so reaching those people, I think, goes back to what I was talking about when I was talking about other attorneys, right? Reaching those people is free education, right? And I'm not talking about college, obviously. I'm talking about me being able to educate them on these subjects and these issues. And so the more I can do conversations like this and seminars and put out articles and posts and stuff like that, that's the best way to reach those people because otherwise they won't know of these issues unless either they hear it from somebody else or they get into trouble. And most of the time, those $2 million sellers will have IP protection. it's not because they're smart most of the time. It's because they've run into an issue previously because they've, been around the block for so long. If they've built such a big company, they understand it, right? And so it's about making sure that people understand what kind of insurance or peace of mind you really need and what you don't and how you prioritize that. One of the best things I think I've implemented in my client consults is A to Z review, if you will. Client comes to me because they're thinking about trademark. Maybe they heard the word trademark or they saw some YouTube guru on it and they want to ask questions about it. So they give me a ring and they start talking. And my question immediately goes, all right, well, what's your business? What are you doing right now? What's the plan next year? 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? Do we have a logo? Are we changing the logo? Like, where is your mind? And they get to a point where like, why are you asking so many questions? I'm like, well, in order for us to really better protect what you're going to do, we need to know what you're going to do for the next 10, 20 years, because I don't want you to spend a ton of money for me to protect something now when in 2 months you're like, you know what, I'm going to go in another direction. Well, we could have protected that other direction at the beginning of the phone call.
Yeah.
Why are you only telling me that?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people in general are scared to talk to attorneys because they're always so, they're ingrained now to they pay by the hour, they pay by the minute, whatever. So if I'm on the phone for 20 minutes, it costs me a lot more than if I'm on the phone for 10 minutes. I don't want to take that much of his time. And a lot of people will say like, well, how do I pay you? And I'm like, no, it's not. It's a free consult. The whole point of this is to figure out how I help you, right?
Mhm.
So it's not so much about urgency as it is just about understanding what it is they can and can't do. And one thing that I always tell clients is, look, again, the people who come out to me are usually the overprotective ones, not the ones who are flying by the seat of their pants. But the overprotective ones will come to me like, I have this great idea. I need 4 patents. I need 33 trademarks. I want to copyright everything. And I got to figure out how to protect trade secret. I'm like, how much money do you have? I'm like, well, we haven't started the business yet. I'm like, all right, well, you willing to drop $100,000 protecting all of this right now? Well, I don't really have that kind of money. I'm like, exactly. So like, let's talk about the business plan and figure out what's going to make you money. Let's protect those things. And then as you make money, we can flow into these other avenues and get a full protection plan. You don't need to just drop a ton of money on these things. And so many people do. And there are so many exploitive services out there that just want your money, and they just say, hey, you want a trademark? Here it is. Just fill out the form. We'll give it to you.
Yeah.
And people will just do it. And they don't get any understanding on it. Yeah, it happens all the time.
Yeah.
So not so much urgency as it is education.
Yeah, so I like the way that you frame that, because you're really taking people, instead of a fear response, you're taking them to an awareness position, right? You also mentioned that you've been teaching recently. Is this part of what you're doing in terms of, educating the public or, e-commerce sellers about what they should be thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing a lot more of these kind of shows and webinars and stuff, and I've noticed that I people tend to understand me a little bit better than they will other people. I don't know if it's just the way that I explain things or what. And so I've been taking that to heart a little bit more and trying to have more phone calls with clients and more webinar style things like this to kind of to speed that along. But I've constantly been thinking about going back to law school to actually teach. I think that would be interesting. I just don't know if I have the time to do it.
Yeah.
But I used to teach in undergrad too. I used to do guitar lessons and math lessons. So I enjoy that kind of stuff. It just kind of got away from me for a little bit.
Yeah. I want to prompt you a little bit about the Neil deGrasse Tyson quote that you shared with me during our prep call. Tell me what that means to you.
So probably one of my favorite quotes. And let's see if I can get it right now, though. So Neil deGrasse Tyson's quote is, "The most dangerous thing that you can do is know enough to think you know everything, but not enough to know you know nothing." I believe that is the quote.
That is
and basically what that means is, and it's especially important in the world we live in now, what that means is you have to dig deep. You can't just look at the surface things, right? We're in a world now where you get 15-second videos we're just scrolling like crazy. And so we get these little tidbits of information, and the information that they're giving you are these very top level hookish kind of information to kind of grab you. And if you take that information for what it is and you don't look into any further and you don't learn any more about it, then all you do is what people have told you, but you haven't taken any action into understanding what those things. And from an entertainment perspective, fine, great, enjoy. But if you're going to take actual action on that, whether that be on your health, your life, your business, your relationships, anything that's of actual vital importance, get more into it and understand it. And you'd be surprised how much of it you don't understand. And as soon as you get to that point where you kind of cross that border and you're like, wow, this is like way more than I think it is, that's a good thing. You want to hit that because if you're going to deep dive into that subject, that's where you're going to start growing and actually learning more about that subject than anything else. If it interests you, you will fall into the black hole of YouTube documentaries or whatever it is and learn all that information. And if it doesn't interest you and you realize how vast it is, then you get to the realization where, okay, if this is something I have to go after, I have to hire this out, which is also a very important thing to learn and understand because you can understand the value of these things. And then when you get to that point and you realize how, let's take trademarks, for example, you realize how vital and important and potentially difficult, filing a trademark and registering a trademark can be in certain circumstances. You might sit there and go, well, why does LegalZoom charge $250 if it takes this much effort? It's a damn good question. You should ask that question. You should be thinking about those things.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're not giving you the same type of service that someone like myself would, who's giving you, an hour worth of free consult. And we're talking about, the next 2 or 3 businesses you might do. Like, they're not looking at those things. So knowing more than what the general public knows is super important and really just general growth in anything whatsoever. It's not just applicable to what I do, it's applicable to life.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that quote. It's a very underrated quote.
Yeah.
Regardless of your thoughts on Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Well, let's bring this home. So our audience is full of founders and small business owners. Some of them are Amazon sellers. Some of them have completely different businesses, but all of them have built something that they care about and would be devastated to lose. So based on everything that you've seen, the accounts frozen, the TROs filed, the businesses that made it and the ones that didn't, what is the most important thing you would tell a small business owner today about protecting what they're building?
Plan and start early would be my 2 biggest, and breathe. For the love of God, breathe. Business is important. It's not the most important thing in your life. And in order for it to become the most important thing in your life, you have to make it there. So breathe and take care of yourself and your family, and then take care of the business. That's number 1. 2, plan. And what I mean by that is you combine this with starting early. Before you take action, sit down and think about it. Where are we going? Like I do my calls. Where are we going next week? 2 months, 6 months, a year, 2, 5 years, whatever it is. Plan that out. And you're able to, once you have that out in a layout form, and I'd recommend using even just pen and paper, but using some sort of a visual medium where you can actually see what's going on. Once you have that planned out, you can sit there and go, okay, well, what do I need to protect through all of this? Because now I'm realizing how many different aspects there are and how much different time it's going to be. And I'm creating all these different things. What if someone takes them? What if someone steals them? What if they move them around? You start to get into this paranoid stage, which can be dangerous. But again, go back to step 1, breathe. And we will discuss all these different elements and figure out what needs to be protected. But you have to start early, you have to plan, and you have to breathe. Okay? Think about these things in different categories of how you'd protect them in terms of what the importance are, and focus on one thing at a time. If you've done everything right up until now, you have a pretty good team around you. You might not have a team of people, like, depending on where you are in your business journey, you might not have employees or a CEO or an integrator and a visionary, whatever it is. You might not have those people, but you have a spouse, you have family members, you have, a best friend, whatever it is. That support team is going to be just as helpful when you starting it as it is when you get employees and stuff like that. Lean on them, utilize them, ask them questions, and don't be afraid to talk to professionals, attorneys, CPAs. Definitely get an accountant, at least talk to an accountant, understand what all that is. Again, knowledge is power. Don't go into this blind. Plan and talk to people, get more information.
Yeah, I love that you take the long view. What are we doing today? But then what are we doing in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, right? That's great advice. Well, Mike, this has been exactly the kind of conversation I hoped it would be. Practical, honest, and genuinely useful for anyone who has ever built something and wants to keep it. But before I let you go, tell our listeners how they can find you and what to do if they think they might need your help.
Sure. So our firm, you can find us at stockmanandporapat.com. You can find me on all various things of social media with my full name. It's Michael, the letter J, Porapat, Poropat. The firm is also on all the socials. It varies based on it, but I think it's Stockman Porapat _ law for the majority of them. And all those things will have my phone number or my email on it. My email is michael@stockmanporapat.com. Feel free to email me. I do not charge for consults. If it gets to a point where I have to, I would let you know beforehand. So do not be afraid to reach out to me. If I can help, I'm more than happy to.
That's great. And if you're an Amazon seller, an e-commerce entrepreneur, or a small business owner who has just never had a conversation with an IP attorney, I want you to think of today's episode as your sign. Mike just gave you the roadmap. The next step is yours. So Mike Pourapet, thank you so much for being on the Think Small podcast. It was a genuine pleasure. And to our Think Small listeners, if this episode made you realize that there's a risk you haven't thought about, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. It might be the most valuable thing you do for a fellow entrepreneur today. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you so much, Denise.
Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?